The group of MPs implacably opposed to her Chequers plan is the European Research Group, chaired by Steve Baker, former Minister at the Department for Exiting the EU, and he's here now. Good morning.
Good morning. I hope you won't mind me saying it's Jacob who chairs it, though. I'm the Deputy Chair.
Forgive me, Deputy Chair of the European Research Group. She's also talked today, of course, about ending free movement.
She has, and I listened carefully to what the Prime Minister said, and I was glad that I was able to agree with her on the vast majority of what she said.
Yeah, on migration, not on Chequers.
Indeed, on migration. So the key thing with migration is that there's democratic control and consent of who can come and live here. I don't think people have a problem with holiday or business visitors, but in terms of being able to come here, live here, claim benefits here, we do need to have democratic consent and control. That's what the Prime Minister was articulating. I also think that we need to treat people equally across the world. You know, I represent thousands of British Asian people, and people, you know, from their point of view, they see categorically different migration requirements within EU membership. So I'm very pleased that the Prime Minister's set out how we can treat people much more equally.
Okay, so you're happy with that. But she is sticking to her Chequers plan. You know, however much that people on your side of the argument and within your group have one after another made it absolutely clear that it's unacceptable to her, she's pressing on with it.
Well, that is the position at the moment, and it is a cause of considerable alarm to us. Yes, it takes off the table all of the benefits of an independent trade and regulatory policy, something which countries around the world are looking forward to. Friends in Australia, in the United States of America, in, well, basically the TPP countries plus the USA.
All of those benefits, of course, she would say, and the government would say that it doesn't. What they have in mind allows those benefits of trade with the rest of the world.
Well, of course, we all have conversations through channels other than through listening to what the government says, and I understand that for the United States, looking at Chequers, they despair of it because they realise that in terms of the degree of regulatory alignment to the EU, they can't do a trade deal with us, because what we'd be doing is becoming a satellite of the EU. If we're a regulatory satellite of the EU, then any country wishing to do a trade deal would of course go to the EU. So it's not merely about tariffs, it's also about, in a sense, debureaucratising the way we do things.
Yes,
you know,
but on products like meat, for example, we're a lot closer to the EU, aren't we, than to the standards that they have in the United States. No one wants the chlorinated chicken over here.
So on these issues, we should be science-led. Now, nobody is proposing that to reduce standards in the UK, and I don't think anyone believes that there is any kind of constituency in the UK for a reduction in food standards. But you know, if you go over to the USA and raise this issue of chlorinated chicken, nobody knows what you're talking about because it's just not an issue.
Because it's normal to them. Of course, it's normal to them, but it's not normal for us.
But in a sense, what people are objecting to is clean chicken.
Well, that is exactly the... So you would be happy to see chlorinated chicken?
So whenever I go to the United States of America, I'm very happy to eat American food. But within the UK, the fundamental point on all of these issues is that our Parliament, our country, should be able to take the decision, science-led decisions, particularly on food. We should be able to take science-led decisions which meet with democratic consent, and that is the fundamental point, not what I personally think about any one particular SPS standard.
OK. The alternative that your group has put forward, the Canada-style deal, is one that has been roundly rejected by the government, primarily on the basis that it cannot apply to the whole of the UK, that it does nothing to solve the Irish border.
Well, of course, there's two things about that. One is the Irish border issues are dealt with in this Plan A+, which the IEA produced, and the ERG a couple of weeks beforehand produced this paper, which I've got with me, on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic post-Brexit. We haven't actually had any substantive criticisms of what's in it. We've had a lot of ad hominem criticisms, but we believe that we have produced a proposal which can operate within the current framework of technology and administration to deliver a free-flowing border with no new infrastructure on the island of Ireland within the boundaries of a free trade agreement. But what I would say on this is my own direct lived experience of being in government is that the government, the machine as a whole, has always wanted a high alignment Brexit. And if you always want a high alignment Brexit, something like the EEA without quite being in the EEA, something like the customs union
so they
without
were never
quite being
signed
in
up.
it. They're never signed up to having a free trade agreement.
Let's just go back to your plan. I mean, what the Chancellor has been very clear about on this programme yesterday and elsewhere is that the EU will never agree to, I mean, they could agree to a free trade agreement on the basis of Canada, but they would never let it apply to Northern Ireland, because that would let goods into the island of Ireland essentially through the back door. You haven't got an answer to that.
Yeah, we have got an answer to that. It goes through in this paper that you do checks away from the border. Of course, remember, not 100%.
You move it 10 miles back. It's still a border.
Well, no, this is a complete nonsense to talk about it moving 10 miles back. Already we're in a position...
You said you have the checks.
So already we're in a position in, say, Rotterdam, where the checks on animals are, I think it was 20 kilometres away from the border. A customs expert from the Netherlands was explaining to us recently. But the point is that there is a border today. There's an excise border, a currency border, a tax border. And all these things are dealt with administratively and with existing technologies. People say technical, and very often they mean administrative. You know, talk to Sajid Javid about what he did with excise duty to make sure that excise duty was properly policed without any border infrastructure, making sure that smuggling was dealt with. If we had a free trade agreement with no tariffs and no quantitative restrictions, there would be no customs duties payable. It would just be a question of making sure that there were declarations made and that rules of origin were complied with. And on the rules, you know, let's not pretend we check 100% of goods coming into the UK from the rest of the world. It's single digits percent have any checks at all, and many of those checks are just documentary.
Steve Baker, thank you.
Thank you.